not only do we want to find the unique capabilities out there that would be applicable to the economy, but how can we then cement that relationship to the point that those companies would locate operations in North Dakota.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 104. Is it possible to design an economic development program around the UAS industry? If you ask today's guest, he'd say they've been doing it for years. Terry Sando is the Director of UAS Sector Development at the Grand Forks Region Economic Development Corporation. The Grand Forks Region EDC promotes economic development in the Northeast North Dakota region, working to establish new wealth and job growth for the city and the county of Grand Forks and the outlying regional communities. Among the leading industries that the EDC targets is the unmanned industry. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Terry talks about the efforts of the Grand Forks Region EDC to encourage and support the growth and formation of UAS companies. And he offers lessons to other economic development professionals on how to nurture this fast-growing industry in their region. Before we hear from Terry, I want to thank everyone that has donated to my campaign on Patreon.com. Together with the one-time contributions, I am more than halfway to my first goal. You can join this effort and get some really cool stuff by going to patreon.com/drone radio show. Thanks again for all your support. And now, let's find out how the Grand Forks region has built one of the most robust unmanned systems industry in the country. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Terry to introduce himself and to tell us what the Grand Forks Region EDC is focusing on in the UAS space.
Well, my name is Terry Sando, and I work for the Grand Forks Region Economic Development Corporation, and my portfolio is basically aerospace and specifically autonomous vehicles. So we're quickly trying to build a cluster of technologies around the sensors as well as the unmanned aerial systems. We're even looking into some of the unmanned tractors and some of those things that we've been working with different companies and looking at too. So we're interested in a whole family of systems, so to speak.
Terry, what is North Dakota's interest in drones, and why did the state decide to focus on the drone industry?
North Dakota as a whole, basically, we're kind of an agricultural economy with energy quickly gaining ground with our shale oil developments out in the western part of the state. But what we're finding is those swings in those two particular commodities have kind of driven a statewide perspective to see how we might be able to diversify. And we're looking at the high-tech advantages from unmanned aerial systems. One of the drivers, Randy, that really kind of got us into this and why Grand Forks specifically was we have Grand Forks Air Force Base, which during the 2005 Base Realignment and Closure Act got re-rolled into the Unmanned Systems, or RPAs, specifically the Global Hawk. We also have the Reaper, what Customs Border Protection calls Predator B. And then our Air National Guard in Fargo was also flying Predators, and now they're upgrading to Reapers. But the fact that we went to unmanned systems at the Air Force Base kind of spurred the Grand Forks region and Grand Forks County specifically to take a look at, well, how can we do this from a commercial perspective and kind of work in bringing that cluster of technologies in. They took an active lead, Grand Forks County did, and they actually have pulled together an enhanced use lease, and it's 217 acres right on Grand Forks Air Force Base with its own private entrance from Highway 2 that is dedicated to strictly bringing in a lot of DoD companies. So the first tenant was Northrop. They went through and they just had the ribbon cutting last month on phase 1 of 3 phases. We also have General Atomics. So that enhanced use lease will include a data center and some of those other things. So we have an air side as well as a ground side. So we are connected and separated by a secure fence that we can open, taxi right on out to Grand Forks Air Force Base, and take off utilizing their runway. So it's a real partnership between the Air Force, the developer, and the county of Grand Forks itself.
So before 2005, were unmanned vehicles recognized as a viable industry?
Yeah, we really didn't look at those opportunities back before 2005. So that was kind of a watershed moment, so to speak, for us, that we decided that that was the appropriate time to start to look into these other opportunities. We also have the University of North Dakota, which has a great aerospace program. And so they were the first ones to come up with an undergraduate unmanned aerial system degree program back in 09, 010 timeframe. And they have approximately 185 students any semester that's going through. Also, because of the aviation background, we have about 125 helicopters and aircraft. And so many of them go through and get their commercial multi-engine instrument ratings in the process of going to get their UAS degree. And because of that, General Atomics especially they really like that pipeline of students that come right into their operations. They get upgraded on Predator or the Reaper, and then they're really able to go out quickly to the worldwide operations that General Atomics is.
What are some of the key projects or initiatives that Grand Forks is working on now?
I'm glad you asked. It's a great question. One of the projects that we're really working hard on is that, and let me step back for a minute. We've been overseas, did the Nordic countries, Israel, and what we're finding is there's a lot of interest in the U.S. market now as the national airspace is opened up to the larger UASs. It looks like about another 45% of the market worldwide. So we've gotten a great deal of interest from companies overseas. Specifically, we're working with Elbit Systems of America. So we have it's about 1,000, 1,200 pounder flying medium altitudes right now. So last year we started flying that with Precision Agriculture. We collected over 11 terabytes of data on a 4 by 40 mile long strip with farmers in that strip that participated. So North Dakota State University did a great job. John Nowatzki was one of the key members that led it. That bird is also, I'm working with it today. We're also working with Excel to do storm damage assessment. And what we're doing is a simulated exercise this next week where a tornado hits one of our smaller towns, Mayville, just to the northwest of here. And because of the electrical power lines being impacted, the damage to the town, what we're looking at is how we can use streaming video to accelerate the decision-making process that Excel goes through to bring their electrical infrastructure back up. So that's really another highlight, that situational awareness. The things that we kind of did in the military for many years, we're now starting to see migrate into the commercial side of the house. Excel is pretty happy with those results. We're also using larger UASs like the Hermes to synchronize smaller UASs and getting into other sensor systems. For example, in precision agriculture, we use multispectral, usually that 4 to 8 bands, but last year we queued it up and we had hyperspectral cameras where we were taking 30 to 50 bands of reflectivity off of these plants. And we think that the new algorithms that type of data would be able to drive will give us information about maybe Roundup resistant weeds and things that are really a big factor for our farmers around here, especially with crops like potatoes, sugar beets, and obviously some of the other high expensive types of crops that they want to monitor.
What are some of the ways in which your organization encourages companies to locate to North Dakota?
Kind of the program that we've used to entice some of these companies to take a look at North Dakota, besides having the outstanding Northern Plains test site, we had a program that was pretty popular. We called it Research North Dakota Grants. What that was a $1-for-$1 match or sometimes in kind. But what that meant is that we had to, in one of our two research universities, University of North Dakota or North Dakota State University, have what we call a principal investigator. And that's where I kind of helped marry up those principal investigators with the companies that we found that were interested in coming to North Dakota. And then we put together these research projects. That's where both the Excel project for storm damage assessment, as well as the precision ag flying that we did last year, that was the match that came in. And those are usually in the area of $700,000 to $1 million. So it reduces some of the unknowns that a company might have to deal with just an example, to ship the Hermes 450, that large UAS, the ground control station, and then the antenna, was about $130,000. Well, we were able to then help defray that cost to get it over here and operate.
Terry, what can you tell us about the opportunities afforded by the presence of the military in Grand Forks?
We have some pretty unique airspace because of the relationship and the enhanced use lease Grand Sky at the Air Force Base. That's really been a stimulus all of its own. So General Atomics, for example, you're probably well aware, they're selling the Reaper or the Predator B, the export versions around the world. So what General Atomics has decided to do, because we have some fairly open airspace, is to be able to come in and actually do foreign military sales training. So they're looking at probably doing about 100 pilots and sensor operators, a little bit of maintenance folks to go with that a year. So that's kind of where the throughput is. And I think we're actually gaining a little bit of traction with the Air Force right now. Again, they're behind as far as fighter pilots, remotely piloted aircraft pilots, and even some of the military airlift guys. So we think that, again, we might be able to package together, streamline some of the training costs, and be able to get that throughput back up for the Air Force too. So that tied with the test site, we have some great airspace. And believe it or not, the FAA kind of chose North Dakota, the test site here, because we have this continental climate. We have really hot summers and we got really cold and windy winters. So, being able to bring those factors together not only makes it a challenge, but it's a good test for the actual systems themselves when they bring them in.
I'd like to go back to the grant program that you mentioned for a moment. Can you talk more about how that program is used to target specific companies?
Part of the grant process, we go and, you put the package together, you compete it with other grant applicants. And so we specifically look for those opportunities that will enhance, be it ag or be it the energy or infrastructure and inspection. And then we get that matching money. And along with that, again, it's competitive, but we specifically look at how that company would also want to make an investment in North Dakota. So the long range perspective or the long range goal that we have is that not only do we want to find the unique capabilities out there that would be applicable to the economy, but how can we then cement that relationship to the point that those companies would locate operations in North Dakota. What we've done to streamline some of that process, we had a foreign trade zone, Randy, that was one of the old general zones. I think if I remember correctly, it was about approximately 40 acres. We went back in and done the paperwork to change it to the alternate site framework, they call it. And so it's a flexible system. So in Grand Forks County, for example, up to 2,000 acres can be put into this alternate site framework. But instead of having whole acres, you can take a specific portion of a building, for example. It might be the ramp space on a facility out at Grand Forks Air Force Base, for example, and we can take and make that a foreign trade zone. So there's a number of opportunities then for these companies from overseas, for example, to come in and they can assemble, use it for seasonal storage, and then put it into the marketplace. And a lot of UASs aren't really tariffed or don't have the duties and things with it. But when you start to look at some of the other companies around the world, the engine might come from Poland, the airframe might come from Norway, the actual autopilot might be from Canada. So again, being able to do these light assembly operations is another enticement that we're using.
A Norwegian company by the name of Robot Aviation recently located in Grand Forks. Was this the result of the type of international outreach that you described?
Yes, it was. Bjorn and Robot Aviation, they visited 3 different times. So what we did is, part of what we want to do is to help them understand the ecosystem. We ask them to come for a visit, and then we'll set up a very aggressive agenda that will show off the capabilities that the University of North Dakota has. We'll take them out and we'll have them visit with the test site personnel. And so this is how they would be able to help do the certification or get the COAs, certificates of waiver and authorization. We'll take them out to Grand Sky, show them the facility, some of our commercial ones. As a result of those 3 visits, part of that, we introduced them to a couple of our electrical utility companies here. They're flying operations using eSmart software in Norway. What we were really interested in, is, to be quite frank, is the robot aviation has a great small turbine autonomous helicopter, and then they're building a larger autonomous helicopter, about a 243 pounder. And what we're finding is, when we're doing the infrastructure inspections, especially the older distribution lines, having that rotary capability where you can hover as you're looking at different points on an electrical power line is pretty important. Whereas with fixed wing, you have to do multiple passes, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. Because of those introductions that we were able to do and seeing what they wanted to use as far as applications for their equipment, and that relationship with the software company eSmart and the smart grid that they work with, we were able to take and put together those meetings. And after talking, our utility companies went, yeah, that's something that would really allow us to be much more proactive. And they're looking at long-term savings. And again, I'll be doing more introductions to Bjorn and eSmart. What we're finding is being able to help them build those relationships and partnerships early on in the discussions and the visits has really paid off for us.
What kind of relationship do you have with the state of North Dakota?
We work hand in hand with the Department of Commerce out in Bismarck. And then our lieutenant governor is the head of the test site. And so one of the things, Governor Burgum built up his own software company that was bought by Microsoft. So he's got great reach back and is highly respected in the Microsoft community because he was a vice president. Because of that, he understands the data, the high performance computing requirements, and some of those things. So we find that the state has been very supportive, both at the governor's and his staff level. We work hand in hand, and we share back and forth. Brian Opp is the point of contact that I have at Commerce. We've been on trips overseas. We collaborate on projects and do a lot of things together. So yeah, we find it is to be able to take and, again, influence and network and to be able to do those things. The larger the team, the better the results. They cooperate quite actively.
As a regional organization, how do you work with local governments and local officials in promoting economic development?
Last year, as part of the program with Elbit, for example, we had what we called VIP Day. So they brought in their president, CEO, Renan, and some of the vice presidents. And then we brought in Senator Hoeven and Congressman Kramer and a lot of our local politicians. Again, had them walk through. We showed some video and we talked about how it's impacting precision ag. Showed how the streaming video was a big help with that last electrical mile, so to speak, of being able to keep safety factors and things like that up and going. So we work closely with them. And as a result, for example, our runway is getting redone next year, and the city, has to make a contribution, the city and the county. And so, again, that's another pathway for us to make sure that they're feeling good and how the economy is impacted by having these systems in our local airport and helping our community. So this is kind of a test basis for them right now, but ultimately they will make a decision of where they're going to locate. And again, we're hoping that our region competes quite well with the rest of the country as to being able to take and bring those operations in here. So that is a very important component. And the more people that you can get involved up front and get the buy-in with, the easier it is for the long term.
Last year, we saw Part 107 go into effect. What impact did that have on UAS interests and on the growth of the industry?
Part 107, when it came out, has had a tremendous impact. Just the smalls under 55 and up to 400 feet. If you look at how fast the demand that was satisfied out there, it quickly surpassed the manned registrations as far as the FAA is concerned. And when you start looking at, right now, there's probably about 1.5 million smalls out there. And we don't know what we don't know yet as far as being able to utilize them effectively. One of the projects that we're trying to work on right now, believe it or not, is the insurance companies are looking at safer ways to take and do those roof inspections, these unmanned systems, so that they don't have to send a person up to look for hail damage, for example, especially on multi-story homes and things. Being able to inspect solar panels on the top of some of our larger buildings at the university and around the state is really quite beneficial. And so we're finding new uses, even with the current technology, So I'm a little bit surprised at how fast it took off in a couple of months. And I think it's going to be the same way, even though it's a little bit slower to get the larger systems up into the national airspace and integrate them with the manned systems. I think once that spigot gets opened up, you're going to just be amazed at how fast these larger systems are going to be able to come in and do a lot of the more mundane types of operations. I'll use energy as a good example. The transmission lines, if you can inspect them faster at less cost, they're going to actually do more inspections because it allows them to be much more proactive in that periodic or that maintenance that they do over the 10-year span of those lines. So I think you're going to find that it's really going to take off.
What advice would you give to other economic development organizations that are trying to nurture UAS growth in their own region?
I'd say keep charging hard because the industry really needs to be fleshed out. And I would recommend that with the smalls, with Part 107 and the training that's taking place there, it's going to be a challenge then to look for the larger beyond visual line of sight capabilities that will really bring the economic impact that we think is going to happen with those types of systems. So I would say, really kind of migrate away from the smalls because I think the growth has taken place and there's a lot of young folks that are tech savvy that are able to take and fly those. Now let's start taking a look at how the beyond visual line of sight operations can be expanded. And that's where if I was looking or giving advice to another economic developer around the country, I would say these are where you need to look at going because we haven't gotten there yet. The FAA's still waiting to take and open some of that up. But I'd say look at beyond visual line of sight. We thought that 80% of it would probably be in precision ag. We were wrong. We've kind of agreed with AUVSI and those folks. We think now that the energy, be it pipeline, be it transmission distribution lines and those types of things, that's the area to take a look at. And let me give you one more example. I've been working closely with Excel and have a great working relationship with them. Just one of the things that they did early on that really piqued their interest was they have 3 of the large steam boiler plants, 2 in Colorado and 1 in Minnesota or vice versa. It used to take them about 6 days to put the scaffolding in, and they had individuals up in harnesses. They took pictures of the different areas of the boiler itself. Well, they took a small unmanned system with a bright light, and they went in. They were able to fly that whole boiler system in about 6 hours. And in the old days, when they did the scaffolding, the labor and all that stuff cost about $125,000. They were able to save over $100,000 per boiler. So just doing those inspections with small UAS saved that company $300,000. And that was one of the first operations they did that kind of whet their appetite for being able to reach out there and go, okay, if we can do this so much more efficiently and safely and saving this much money, what else can we do? So you'll find that those unique opportunities, being able to talk to companies like that, like an Excel and in those other areas of the country, and just thinking out of the box a little bit, you'll find that being able to do that networking and say, hey, I heard about this from someone else and they were able to save this. What do you think about doing that? Again, it goes right into that partnership building that companies are looking for.
Terry, is there anything that we missed that we should talk about?
I think that, again, I just kind of want to emphasize, too, that when you're talking to other economic developers around the country, don't neglect reaching out to companies overseas. There's still a lot of interest in our market here in the United States. We've built a number of relationships. Robot aviation is just one of a couple. But I would also encourage those other economic developers to do some data mining on potential companies in other countries, for example, utilizing what the needs are in their particular region that they could actually reach out. Again, don't forget the U.S. Department of Commerce. They've got some great gold key opportunities if you go over to visit other countries where they'll help set up business meetings with these types of companies when you do go overseas after that data mining. So another way to take a look at it, peel the onion back.
That's it for episode 104 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Terry Sando of the Grand Forks Region Economic Development Corporation and learning about their efforts to support and promote the drone industry in North Dakota. I want to thank Terry for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about the Grand Forks Region EDC or want to connect with Terry, check out the website at grandforks.org. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1 per month, you can help defray the costs of production. To donate, go to patreon.com/Drone Radio Show. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.